The usher looked me up and down like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe and said, "Sir, family members who need assistance will be watching from the overflow room." I was wearing my Navy dress uniform. "My name is Daniel Mercer. I am 74 years old. I have a Purple Heart and a Silver Star. I once repaired a radar system under enemy fire with nothing but a pocket knife and a prayer. And last Tuesday, a 22-year-old kid in a clip-on tie pointed me toward a folding chair in front of a television set because he decided, just by looking at me, that I couldn't handle a banquet hall. Let me back up. My granddaughter, Lily, is 16 years old and the most extraordinary human being I have ever encountered in 7 decades of living. I say that having met 3 presidents, a Nobel laureate, and a man in Okinawa who could crack a walnut with his eyebrows. Lily is smarter than all of them combined and twice as stubborn, which she gets from her grandmother, God rest her soul, and not from me because I am a deeply reasonable man. Lily had been working on her science project for 8 months. 8 months of weekends at my kitchen table, of phone calls at 10 o'clock at night where she'd explain something about atmospheric particulate matter, and I'd pretend to understand more than 30% of it. 8 months of her showing up at my door with notebooks full of data and eyes full of that particular fire that young people get when they've found the thing they were made for. Her project was about air quality in low-income neighborhoods. She had mapped pollution levels across 6 zip codes. She had built sensors from scratch, built them with her own hands, and deployed them across the city over a period of 5 months. She had corresponding data sets, control groups, peer-reviewed literature. She had a methodology section that her AP environmental science teacher said was graduate-level work. She had asked me to be there because her parents were overseas. Her mother, my daughter, Christine, was in Germany for work, a trip that had been planned before the banquet date was announced. Her father, Marcus, had flown out to be with Christine after a family emergency on her side. Lily had told them to go, that she'd be fine, and then she had called me and asked if I would come, and she had said, "I want someone there who actually cares, Grandpa," and I had put on my dress uniform because I wanted her to know that I understood this was a serious occasion. I drove 40 minutes. I found parking 4 blocks away because the lot was full. I walked those 4 blocks in dress shoes that are 30 years old and still shine like mirrors, past a row of restaurants and a pharmacy and a park where 2 children were chasing pigeons, and I want to be honest about this, I felt genuinely happy. The particular happiness of a person who knows they are exactly where they are supposed to be. The banquet was held at the Riverside Conference Center, a place with glass doors and a lobby with marble floors, and a chandelier that someone had clearly paid too much for. There were students in formal wear milling around, parents with cameras, teachers in blazers. A banner read, Annual Regional Science and Innovation Banquet CELEBRATING Tomorrow's Minds. I found the registration table. A young woman with a name tag that said volunteer found my name on the guest list, Daniel Mercer, guest of Lily Mercer Walsh, and gave me a program and a lanyard. I thanked her. I started walking toward the main hall. That's when the usher stepped in front of me. He was young, early 20s, with the particular expression of a person who has been given a small amount of authority and has immediately overinvested in it. He looked at me, at my cane, at my age, at whatever story he had already written about me in his head, and smiled the smile of someone being carefully patient. "Sir," he said, "family members who need assistance will be watching from the overflow room. It's very comfortable. There's a large screen." I looked at him. "I have a seat assignment," I said, "table 7. "Of course," he said in a tone that meant of course not. "But the overflow room is really wonderful. It's quieter, more accessible." I want to be fair to him. I think he thought he was being kind. I think he looked at a 74-year-old man with a cane and a dress uniform and made a series of assumptions, none of which were malicious, and all of which were wrong. I think he genuinely believed he was helping. But here is what I have learned in 74 years. The road to making someone feel invisible is paved almost entirely with people who thought they were being helpful. I appreciate that, I said. I'll be at table 7. He shifted slightly, positioning himself the way people do when they don't want to seem like they're blocking you, but they're blocking you. We really do recommend it for guests who might find the hall a bit overwhelming. Son, I said, and I used the voice I used to use on young sailors who had made a poor decision and needed to understand it quickly. I was navigating the flight deck of an aircraft carrier in a North Atlantic storm at 23 years old. I have been in a banquet hall before. Please step aside. He stepped aside. I found table 7. I sat down. I set my program on the table and straightened my medals, force of habit, and looked around at the room, which was filling up steadily with families and teachers and the bright, nervous energy of students who had worked very hard and were about to find out if it had been enough. Lily found me 20 minutes later. She came through the crowd looking like she owned the building, wearing a green dress and her grandmother's pearl earrings, carrying a folder of notes she didn't need. She saw me and her whole face changed, that particular softening that only happens when someone is genuinely relieved to see you. You came, she said. Of course I came. You wore your uniform. You told me it was formal. She sat down across from me and leaned forward like she used to when she was 8 years old and had a secret. I'm third, she whispered. They told us the order. I'm presenting third. Are you nervous? She considered this with the seriousness she applied to all questions. I'm excited, she said finally. Nervous and excited feel the same in your chest. I've decided to call it excited. I thought about this. Your grandmother used to say something like that, I said. Lily smiled. I know, she told me. The banquet began. There were speeches, a school board member, the conference director, a professor from the university who was serving as head judge. There was dinner, which was the kind of catered food that is fine without being memorable. There were introductions and acknowledgments, rounds of applause, a slideshow of project titles set to music that was slightly too loud. And then there were the presentations. The first student presented a project on water filtration using biochar, good work, methodical, clearly explained. The second was a robotics project with a small demonstration that made the room lean forward in their seats. And then the MC said, our third presenter is Lily Mercer-Walsh, a sophomore at Jefferson High School, with her project, Breathless, Mapping Invisible Inequality in Urban Air Quality. Lily walked to the front of the room. I have watched her grow up. I have seen her in school plays and soccer games and birthday parties and hard moments and easy ones. I have seen her at her grandmother's funeral, standing very straight and not crying until we got to the car, and then crying for 45 minutes while I drove nowhere in particular because sometimes motion is the only comfort available. But I had never seen her like this. She stood at that podium like she had built it herself and was simply returning to it. She pulled up her first slide, a map of the city, overlaid with a color gradient from pale yellow to deep red, and she said, if you were born on the east side of this city, the air you breathed as a child contained 43% more particulate matter than if you were born on the west side. That's not weather. That's not geography. That's a decision. And for the past 8 months, I've been trying to understand exactly how that decision was made and what it has cost the people who never got a vote. The room was quiet. She spoke for 14 minutes. She walked them through her sensor network, 21 devices, built by hand, placed with permission from community organizations in 6 neighborhoods. She explained her methodology with the casual confidence of someone who has rehearsed it so many times it has become part of her. She showed graphs that told stories, maps that made arguments. She talked about health outcomes and childhood asthma rates, and the relationship between zoning decisions made in the 1970s and the lungs of children who were born 40 years later. And then at the end, she showed a photograph. It was taken in the kitchen of a family in the Eastmore neighborhood, a mother, 3 children, a small apartment. On the counter next to a coffee maker was one of Lily's sensors. Pale blue housing, small LED light. This family let me put a sensor in their home for 4 months, Lily said. They wanted to know what they were breathing. They had never been asked that question before. Nobody had thought it was worth asking. She paused. I think that's the most important thing this project taught me, not the data, the asking. There was a moment of silence. And then the room applauded, and it was the kind of applause that has weight to it, that isn't just polite, that means people are responding to something that mattered to them. I was not crying. I want to be clear about that. My eyes were simply reacting to the dry air in the conference room, which clearly needed better humidity control. The presentations continued. There were 9 in total, all of them impressive, several of them remarkable. When they finished, the judges retired to deliberate, and the room broke into the warm, loud conversation of people who have been sitting formally for 2 hours and are now free to move. Lily came back to the table and sat down and said, "Well." "Well," I said, "you were extraordinary." She looked at me steadily. "Grandpa, you have to say that." "I do not have to say anything. I am 74 years old and I have earned the right to silence. I'm telling you because it's true." She accepted this. She poured herself a glass of water. She said, "Did you have any trouble getting in? I saw them set up an overflow room and I asked about it and they said it was for elderly guests who needed." She stopped. She read my face. "Grandpa." "It was nothing." "What happened?" "A young man made some assumptions and then I corrected them." "Did you use the voice?" "What voice?" "The voice." "I don't know what you're talking about." She looked at me for a long moment and then started laughing, not unkindly, but freely, the way she laughs when something is genuinely funny and she's too tired to hold it back. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Don't apologize, you didn't do anything." "I know, but still." She shook her head. "You wore your uniform and they sent you to a back room with a TV." "They tried," I said. "They didn't succeed." The judges returned after 30 minutes. There were 3 awards: 3rd place, 2nd place, and 1st. 3rd place went to the robotics project, which was deserving. 2nd place went to a project on soil remediation that I hadn't fully understood but had clearly impressed the judges. And 1st place, the Regional Science Innovation Award, with a scholarship and an invitation to the state competition in May, went to Lily Mercer Walsh. She walked to the front of the room a second time. She accepted the award with both hands. She said thank you in a voice that was steady and clear. She turned to come back to the table and she caught my eye across the room, and she smiled, not the big smile, not the performance smile, but the small one, the real one, the one I have been watching since she was 3 years old and figured out how to open the childproof cap on a vitamin bottle, and looked up at me with the absolute satisfaction of a person who has solved a problem. Afterward, while people were gathering their things and the caterers were beginning to move through the room, the young usher found me. He looked uncomfortable. He said, "Sir, I owe you an apology. I was out of line earlier." I looked at him. He was young. He had a good face, the kind that still showed what he was thinking. "You were," I agreed, "but you came to say so, which matters." "I saw your granddaughter's presentation," he said, "the one about the air quality. She's been working on it for 8 months. I could tell." He paused. "My neighborhood was on that map. I grew up in Eastmore." I looked at him more carefully then. "Then you understand what she was saying," I told him. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I do." We shook hands. He went back to his post by the door. I found Lily by the display boards, already surrounded by 2 judges and a teacher who wanted to talk about the state competition. I stood nearby and let her have the moment. There was no need for me to be in the center of it. That has never been why you show up for people. You show up so that they can look across a room and find a face that is glad to see them, that tells them without words that what they did was real and it mattered, and someone who loves them was there to witness it. I am Daniel Mercer. I am 74 years old. I have a purple heart, a silver star, and a granddaughter who is going to change things. They put me in the overflow room. I didn't stay there. Some people decide who you are before you open your mouth. The only answer to that is to keep walking forward, and to raise children who build sensors in kitchens and ask the questions nobody else thought were worth asking.